Thank you very much, Assistant Minister. Well, there's lots of ways that you can participate in the conversation today. So we will put up the Slido link. I strongly encourage you to please think about some of the questions that you may want to ask. We also have the opportunity to participate on our social media platforms. So please use the hashtag Regulators Day 2024. We'll also get that added to the chat. But it is my absolute pleasure to now introduce the next part of this afternoon's proceedings. I would like to introduce Natasha Sekulic and the senior leadership at the ACNC for the regulatory overview session. So this is a great opportunity. It's a very popular session, and you can direct questions, inquiries, thoughts to the senior leadership across the ACNC. So I will hand over to Tash as our leaders get moved onto the stage. Thanks, Tash.
Thanks, Mel. For those who don't know me, I'm the Assistant Commissioner General Counsel at the ACNC, and I'm really excited to bring this first panel to you today. This is essentially an overview of what's happening in the ACNC and what's on our horizon. So I'll be joined by the directors at the ACNC. Some of these faces are very familiar to you, and some are new. Some are new in different roles that you might not have seen before. So with me on the panel today, I've got Rajan Smith, the Director of Advice Services, Education and Public Affairs. I'll just ask someone to go on mute until we're all ready to speak. We've got Raj Aiyappan, our Technical Director of Registrations. I think Raj will be with us shortly. We've got Caitlin Edwards. Caitlin's acting in the Director of Legal and Policy role. We've got Michelle Cozadinos, who is a new face to you. She's our new Director of Compliance. Tim Liu is our Acting Director of Reporting, Red Tape Reduction and ACNC Corporate Services. And we've also got Rob Jackson, our Director of IT, Information Technology, but I feel like it's so much broader than those words. So I'm going to start with Rachel. Rachel, can you give us an update on the ACNC's charity engagement focus and initiatives to support charities to meet their obligations?
Thanks, Tash. So from a charity engagement lens, we aim to develop guidance and tools to help charity leaders understand and meet their obligations and deliver that content to them. Despite that, as many as 28% of charities are late lodging their annual information statement, and around 2.5% fail to lodge 2 or more annual information statements. And then they're subject to revocation. When we ask them why, there's a range of reasons, but many say they didn't receive our reminders. Sometimes it's because the address for service was not up to date, or the email was received by the charity but didn't reach the person who needed to action it. It's also evident that not all charities appreciate the consequences of revocation until after it's happened. So the challenge for us is that while board members, or we call them responsible people, are accountable for charities, we have no direct communication to those people. And without charity leader engagement, any information we produce has limited utility, and it doesn't matter how much guidance we develop if charity leaders don't know it exists. So we framed our stakeholder engagement work around increasing engagement of leaders to encourage them to remain connected with the ACNC, primarily through our newsletter, The Charitable Purpose. This is our flagship channel to drive the most relevant content to charities when they need it. Our open rates for that e-newsletter are 51%, which is well above industry standard, but we'd still like to see that higher. Over the last year, we've approached this challenge in a number of ways. We've developed what we call a responsible people welcome letter with key information, and this will be sent automatically to a new board member when they're added to a charity. Then there's our guidance for the charity life cycle. This has included publishing de-identified reasons for registration decisions. These are new resources that focus on the most common issues in registration applications with a view to helping not-for-profits avoid common errors. Self-assessing income tax reporting changes, or SAIT as we often call it, brought a new challenge in communication for us. How to support a large number of not-for-profits work out if they are eligible to be registered. We were developing an online tool anyway to support current charities self-assess if they're meeting their ongoing obligations. So we decided to add another pathway to the tool so that not-for-profits could assess whether they meet the requirements to become registered and easily find guidance to help them prepare an application. That tool went live in mid-July, and in the month since then, it's had over 800 views, 116 people have completed the tool, and 300 have partially completed it. And I'd like to acknowledge members of our sector and advisor forums who provided input into development of that resource, because our feedback is invaluable. We've also migrated and integrated the material from our online learning courses that were hosted on a third-party platform. So we started with the material relating to governance standards and external conduct standards. That's now available on our website, and we'll continue that piece of work this year. Campaigns are another important part of our work. For some of the key issues impacting the sector, like cybersecurity, the ACNC is not the primary expert, but the issue does speak to good governance. So we try to partner with other agencies who are experts on those topics. This year we worked with the Australian Signals Directorate on a cybersecurity campaign for charities. It included updating our guidance and pushing out key message and signposting to guidance of ours and ASD via our newsletter and social media. And we also recorded a podcast, and that podcast received the highest number of listeners for an episode yet. In terms of the coming year, our plans include publishing some guidance about charities and artificial intelligence, extending our offering of online self-assessment tools to cover a range of topics for charities to check their governance health, working in partnership with the Australian Centre for Evaluation and the Government Behavioural Economics team on a trial to see if changes to our reminders letters will impact on-time lodgement rates. Our advice services team are trialling a tracing and outbound calls to charities that we know have an invalid address for service to try and engage them back with the ACNC. They've started this work already, and the early results are good, with around 33% of entities they contacted taking following up action to avoid revocation, which is great because it reduces the amount of what we call reverse workflow for us, for the ATO, and for the charities themselves in having to then re-register. And finally, we're looking at developing a strategy to improve our engagement with those groups we've identified as most at risk of double defaulting. And they tend to be small, organised small charities where there's a high turnover in board members or where there are language barriers for board members. So we'll keep you updated as those things change as well. Thanks, Tash. That's it from me.
Thanks, Rachel. I do want to have enough time to get through all of the directors. So if you've got questions for Rachel, pop them in Slido and we'll have time for some questions at the end. So I'm going to pass over to you, Raj, now. Can you tell us what's happening in the registration space?
Thanks, Tash. Yes, I certainly can do that. Hi, everyone. Rajan Aiyappan. I'm the Technical Director in Registration. Sue mentioned there were about 500 odd people attending this event. So if you're not familiar with the registration team, we're actually the largest area at the ACNC by headcount. We're responsible for assessing charity registration applications and generally ensuring the integrity of the ACNC register. At the last Regulators Day, we mentioned that we do have a 2-director structure in our team, and given the size, we have continued with this. My colleague, Lisa Difford, is currently in the other director position until this week, so you'll get a chance to meet Lisa in a later session today. In terms of what's been happening in the registration space, it has been an incredibly busy year for us, marked by, I guess, the increase in cases that we've seen potentially through the state reforms. Before I get onto that, I will just briefly talk about one of the milestone events that passed this year. For those who have attended past ACNC events, you would be aware that we undertook a project to update our online charity registration application form. So the online form is essentially the main way an organisation will apply for charity registration to the ACNC. The form hasn't had a significant update for some length of time, and from the previous iteration, we've had updates to our processes, functionality improvements, undertaken reviews. All of those things have led us and warranted us revisiting the form. I'm really pleased to advise that the new form was launched in June, mid-June, without too many problems, I would say. It was a culmination of a significant period of work leading into it, creating the detailed requirements, working across the ACNC and with external agencies, along with engaging our vendors and developers. I would also like to say a special thank you to members of the sector who contributed to the development of the form. Certainly appreciate the time you've taken to help us in developing the requirements, providing feedback, and especially undertaking the user testing prior to deployment. For the users of the form, I would just like to remind everyone that really the users are a diverse group as the charity sector itself. So striking the balance on the right amount of guidance and framing questions appropriately at the right level was always going to be a challenge. We fully appreciate that in spite of all the work that was undertaken, that there could still be opportunities for improvement, and that is something that we're willing to look at in the future. I would just encourage everyone, if you do have feedback on the form, if you have used it, there is a very short survey of 4 questions that's available at the end of each application, and we'd encourage you to use that opportunity to provide any of your commentary. Registration has had a large number of applications this year, and this is a trend we've seen consistently. Just to give some context, in 2023-24, we've seen an increase of approximately 14% compared to the prior year. Last year represented the highest number of applications we've received in a single year since the ACNC was established. And May in particular was the highest number of applications in a single month in our history. So the demand for registration services has obviously had an impact on the time it has taken us to work on our applications. This was recognised, and we had implemented a number of steps to reduce our work on hand. We've reviewed and refined our existing processes. We've prioritised older work. We've looked at our documentation and reviewed some of our technical positions. We've also undertaken a significant amount of work in terms of building capability of staff, updating our training, recruiting and onboarding cohort of new staff. Thankfully, and I'm pleased to say that our case queues have shortened significantly in the past 2 months as we've brought on more staff and they've completed the initial training period. Our workloads continue to be impacted by the SAIT reforms. It's a little early to tell whether this positive movement will continue and how those SAIT reforms will continue to impact over the forthcoming months. However, it is safe to say that this will factor into our planning going forward. And now we do have a session later on, I understand, on the impacts of the SAIT reforms, and Lisa will be able to speak a little bit more about what we've done in this space. So if you do have any specific questions in relation to that area, may I suggest just parking those for the moment, and Lisa will be able to address it. The other piece of work that we've undertaken over the year was our deductible gift recipient reviews. So each year we review 2% of DGI endorsed charities to assess their continued eligibility for registration and for registration with particular subtypes. Our reviews are generally conducted in 2 stages, where we initially conduct a desktop review. If that review identifies any issues or we need further information, we will move on to the next stage where we'll conduct more detailed reviews. In 2023-24, we included health promotion charities for the first time, along with continuing on our reviews of public benevolent institutions and charities with other DGR types of endorsement. And last year, pleased to report that we met our target of reviewing 2% of DGR charities by completing 492 desktop reviews. We're currently in the process of reviewing the results of our detailed work. Now, if you are interested in the prior results, I will just point you to the ACNC website, which has information on the reviews that are conducted and the outcomes from those reviews as well. Looking forward, we're in the midst of training our staff and reviewing our procedures in preparation for the launch of the 2024-25 reviews. We've got a pretty broad focus for the coming year, which will include looking at charities holding DGR types that haven't been the subject to reviews in the past. And I think that's about all I have for you there. Tash, thanks.
Thanks, Raj. Sounds like you're very busy. Michelle, you're our brand new face here, so I'm going to pass over to you to give us a little bit of an introduction as to who you are, what you bring to the role of the Compliance Director, and what's been happening in the compliance space.
Thanks, Tash, and good afternoon, everyone. I come to you with 25 years in government, 23 years in investigative and regulatory and compliance settings, including the Australian Federal Police as a sworn police officer. The last 15 years, I've been a director across multiple agencies, including commissions and statutory authorities. In the past, I was a bushfire brigade volunteer, and I personally enjoy supporting a number of community and charity organisations. So I'm super excited to be here in a new agency with a new industry and sector to get to know and work with, new legislation and regulations to wrap my head around. And I'm really looking forward to getting to know the sector and understanding how I can work best with you on the compliance front. It's only been 7 weeks, but I am learning so much and I'm just amazed at the variety of charities in the sector. I've been really impressed with the depth of knowledge in the team and also the commitment, passion, and dedication to the work. In terms of the year that has been, reviews have been a key area of our work. This is where we essentially conduct targeted surveys or audits of charities on a specific topic, and we're then able to share and give back to the sector in a way that meets your needs and respond proactively to emerging risk and leverage our findings to inform practical education and guidance resources. Safeguarding was one priority area. Obviously, many of you will be working with vulnerable people, so having policies and appropriate governance in place to reduce the risk of harm to people is really important. However, what we found was that while all charities could speak about the importance of safeguarding and acknowledge its risk, only half had satisfactory compliance and the remaining were either unsatisfactory or only partially satisfactory. We did see that charities that had good safeguarding governance were frequently engaging with the wider sector and sharing resources and knowledge which reduced the individual burden. We also noted adequate governance did require a resource investment, and smaller charities were tending to struggle with this and generally lack suitable policies and procedures. So a great opportunity there to be working across the board with your colleagues. Cyber was our other review, which Rachel touched on. Cyber attacks can have far-reaching consequences. So cybersecurity is something that does need to be at the front of mind for many of you. I'm not going to give ask you to tune in later this afternoon for our session specifically on cybersecurity. We will be revisiting cyber again in the year to come, so it is important you get up to speed with that. Complex structures is another emerging priority area, and this year we will be targeting our enforcement efforts in this space. The ACNC is increasingly concerned about the use of complex structures as a deliberate means to conceal non-compliance. Complex structures also create complexities associated with governance obligations and may also be at a heightened risk of inadvertent non-compliance. In terms of our investigations, ACNC applies a risk-based and proportionate approach to non-compliance. Our objective is always to ensure public trust and confidence in charities in the non-for-profit sector and support you to do what you do best in serving your respective communities. However, as with any regulator, where appropriate, we've got a range of enforcement tools available to use as needed. I'll be dropping in and out of tables throughout the day. I look forward to meeting many of you and hearing more about the work that you do in your communities. And of course, happy to hear different perspectives and feedback. And that's really helped for me at this early stage of my time in the Commission. Thanks, Tash.
Thanks, Michelle. Caitlin is currently acting in our Director of Legal and Policy role. So what's happening in the legal space, Caitlin, and what's on the horizon?
Thanks, Tash. Yes, I'm enjoying acting at the moment. I joined the ACNC just over a year ago. In fact, Regulators Day last year, I was day 2 on the job, which was a very big change, listening to this bunch as my new colleagues and client, rather than popping all my burning questions in Slido as a charity lawyer and advisor to the sector. So in terms of what's keeping us busy in legal over the past year, it's been about a year since we published the updated Commissioner's Interpretation Statement on Public Benevolent Institutions, or PBIs. Commissioners' interpretation statements are a really important guidance document that help to let charities, advisors, the public and our own staff know how we apply and interpret a particular topic or area of law. PBIs are organisations that deliver relief to people who are in need. They represent the largest deductible gift recipient cohort, and there's a lot of interest in eligibility, particularly around what this very old term means in a modern context. And you can also check out the compendium, which shows how we've taken into account the really valuable feedback that we get from the sector in developing these documents. Closely related to that is the work our team has been doing to support Equality Australia litigation. So many of you will know Equality Australia is an existing ACNC registered charity dedicated to equality for LGBTIQ+ individuals. It applied to add the PBI subtype, and that case has now made its way through the Administrative Appeals Tribunal and the full federal court. So we had a court hearing in late May, and we're still awaiting judgment on that one, and we'll obviously update the website once we have that decision. I guess my personal reflection on those two big pieces of work is that where ideas like PBI and concepts like that are contested, often sitting beneath that is a common interest, and I think that's in having clarity and certainty in the law, and I'm really hoping to get some of that in the reasoning from the full federal court soon, particularly in relation to advocacy and indirect relief. A third thing we've been busy doing, especially our policy team, is playing with the template constitution for charitable companies limited by guarantee. We really just tinkered around the edges last year, but now we're embarking on a bigger refresh. So if you have used that document before or have feedback, really encourage you to jump onto our website. There's a short survey there that you can fill out. It's up until the 23rd of September. And your comments will help us to make this a really clear and user-friendly document for charities, particularly small companies and those that might not have access to tailored guidance. In terms of what's going to keep us busy in the coming year, in the lead up to the federal election, issues-based and political advocacy will obviously be of interest, and we'll continue to work with our colleagues to publish education and guidance resources that can help charities to confidently exercise their voice and contribute really valuably to public debate, while also knowing where some of those boundaries are and how they can comply with their obligations as charities. And the final thing I would draw your attention to is a Treasury Laws Amendment Bill that's currently before Parliament. There's two things in there that are of interest to this sector. The first is a red tape reduction measure, and Tim will speak more about red tape shortly. But it's for those charities that are also registered with ASIC. So the goal is that if you're registered with us, you shouldn't have to update ASIC of any details. There's a few quirks in the Corporations Act that have been undermining that policy position, and this act is going to go some way to fixing that, which is great. And the second set of changes in there to look out for are some proposed changes to our secrecy provisions in the ACNC Act, which will allow us to disclose some information about ongoing and new compliance investigations where that would prevent public harm and that's subject to some safeguards around ensuring that there's no disproportionate harm to the charities or the individuals they work with. So that's really part 2 of the secrecy reforms, and Rachel touched on part 1 earlier with the de-identified decisions project.
Thanks, Caitlin. Tim, you've got a very long job title and a large portfolio. So can you tell us a bit about some of the highlights that are happening in your space?
Thanks, Tash. So before I move on to some reporting and red tape reduction updates, I did want to speak about some of the internal initiatives that we have undertaken to maintain our positive workplace culture and build our staff capability. In the last year, we launched what we call a people network, which empowers our staff to contribute to an inclusive and diverse workplace. We have launched monthly micro-learning sessions on topics such as public speaking and how we can write for better clarity and consistency. And we also continue to run what we refer to as Innovation Hour. It's a monthly open forum that allows staff to put forward any idea that helps us to deliver on our purpose. In combination, these initiatives are part of our commitment to ensuring that we have the skills with the right, we have the staff with the right skills and knowledge to help meet our objectives. Moving on to other matters, I can confirm that the 2023 Annual Information Statement will be available from September. I'd also like to take this opportunity to remind large charities about their key management personnel reporting obligations. Each year, we conduct a number of financial reporting reviews focused on data in the Annual Information Statement and the Annual Financial Report. These reviews are focused on ensuring that the data in the Annual Information Statement or Financial Report comply with our legislative requirements, and they form part of our overall strategy to ensuring that the charity register contains accurate information. We have recently completed our reviews for 250 medium and large charities for the 2022 reporting period, and we found that about a third of large charities made a material error when providing key management personnel information in the Annual Information Statement. We are conscious that the 2022 reporting period was the first year of this new reporting requirement, but we strongly encourage all large charities to review our guidance. In particular, I'd strongly encourage these charities to ensure that the data in the Annual Information Statement matches what is in the Annual Financial Report. Last but not least, I'd like to talk about some red tape reduction work that we are undertaking. As many of you know, we are committed to continue working with government to reduce unnecessary regulatory burden, but I am conscious that not all of our work can be publicly discussed at this stage. One issue that I would like to talk about is the perennial ASIC register issue. So as Caitlin mentioned, for those that don't know, when the ACNC was established in 2012, there was a change in the duty to notify obligations for directors of charitable companies. When we were established, these obligations moved from ASIC to the ACNC. However, ASIC still maintains a company register that includes details of directors. And as a result, there is often conflicting information between what's on the charity register and what is on the ASIC company's register. The ACNC had been working within the Modernising Business Registers program, the MBR program, which involved transferring responsibility of the company's register from ASIC to the ATO. So we've been working within that program to seek a resolution of this issue. In August last year, the government decided to discontinue the MBR program, and as a result, responsibility for the company's register has now transitioned back to ASIC. While the program has ceased, I want to assure all of you that we have and continue to work and advocate within government for resolution of this issue. This includes participating in interagency meetings that are chaired by an ASIC commissioner as part of ASIC's Registry Connect program. Looking ahead, the Assistant Minister has helpfully summarised some of our priorities for the coming year. We will work with state and territory regulators that have yet to fully implement the deemed recognition model. For those that missed the Assistant Minister's speech, this model will allow ACNC registered charities to be deemed to hold a local fundraising authority, removing the need for registered charities to submit individual applications to fundraise. We will also continue to support the implementation of the national fundraising principles across Australia, and we will work with the Australian Accounting Standards Board as they develop a simplified accounting requirement for smaller charities. Thanks, Tash.
Thank you, Tim. And Rob, last but not least, can you tell us a little bit about what's happening in the IT space?
Thanks, Tash, and great to see everybody here. Yes, the Information Technology Directorate's a small group made up of about 5 discrete teams. The services team are responsible for supporting and managing the operation of our technology across the agency. That's both internal systems, the infrastructure, the business applications, as well as external facing services such as the online forms, the charity register, and the charity portable. They enable our digital capability that supports our staff to work effectively and allows charities to comply with their obligations. The projects team collaborate across ACNC to help deliver strategic projects, such as Raj touched on, the new registration form, and of course the annual information statements. This year, they also worked to upgrade our website platform and moved our telephony platform to a cloud-based system which better supports hybrid ways of working, amongst many other initiatives. The data team manage our data environment. ACNC holds a lot of data, a lot of charity data, and we are committed to sharing this information and the insights as widely as possible. They work across ACNC to contribute to the annual charities report and the Data Explorer. They also share data with government agencies and the broader public via services such as data.gov.au with the aim of reducing sector red tape. The team have recently worked with our Registrations Directorate to develop a bulk registration process. The information management team ensures that ACNC complies with our National Archives obligations by implementing good record-keeping practices. This year, we were able to implement significant technology platform improvements to help us improve the way that we manage our information records. And lastly, the cybersecurity and emerging technology team. This team works to ensure that ACNC complies with its obligations under the PSPF, which is the policy framework that helps government agencies protect their people, their information, and their assets. The team worked to implement the Essential 8 cybersecurity strategies, which aim to mitigate the risk and improve our security posture. And we've also been working on a multi-year cybersecurity strategy. The team also have expertise in emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, and in collaboration with the data team, have been exploring and prototyping new capabilities that we've managed to unlock with the use of the Microsoft Azure AI platform. The team also led ACNC's participation in the Microsoft Copilot trial that was organised and led by the Digital Transformation Agency. Some of the upcoming priorities for Q1 and Q2 are obviously the delivery of the new annual information statement, including the both the group and the bulk lodgement, and also delivery of multi-factor authentication on the charity portal, which has already been deployed to our test environments. This capability will be progressively rolled out across the live charity portal, and will also include some minor improvements to self-service password resets. We've got further work happening to work on our Essential 8 cybersecurity strategy to improve our security posture. And I might leave it there. Back to you, Tash.
Thanks, Rob. Sounds like you're very busy there. Now, we've got a little bit of time for questions from the audience. So I do encourage you, I know we're using the chat function, but for the questions that you'd like to ask the directors, please use Slido. Mel, have we got any questions that have come through?
Absolutely. So there's a lot to cover and unpack with what everyone has touched on. I might start with a relatively easy one, which I'm going to ask Caitlin. Any ideas around timeframes as to when the Equality Australia decision will be handed down?
Thanks, Mel. My understanding is the federal court sets itself a KPI, or at least a policy of trying to deliver judgments within 3 months. So that would take us to next week if they're on time, so soon, but that's my best guess.
Thank you. Question for Raj. When does a charity find out if it's part of a DGR review?
Thanks, Mel. So as I mentioned, we undertake 2 stages. We'll do the initial desktop review where we won't contact a charity. It'll just be on information available to us. If that is escalated to the second stage, that is when we engage with the charity. Generally, we will try to give the charity at least 2 months from when we contact them to when we commence the review. We do have a range of information on our website, including our self-assessment tool, which will allow the charity to go in and to assess its position with respect to its charity registration, so forth. So generally 2 months notice. I should just note that we're in the process of conducting our desktop reviews at the moment, which we would expect would take us towards the end of this calendar year, and then look into the detailed reviews later on in the year. Early next year. Thanks.
Thank you, Raj. I'll direct the next question to Michelle. There's a few questions around what the ACNC considers to be complex structures. I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Mel. What we see as the most common structure for a charity is a single incorporated structure. What we would deem as complex is a company that doesn't necessarily have immediate transparency about ownership or control. There might be layers of corporate offices, sub-entities, and related party arrangements such as trusts, companies, and unincorporated bodies. So that's what we'll be keeping an eye out for.
Thank you, Michelle. A question about the new welcome letter. So I might direct this to Rachel. The new welcome letter, is it possible to get a copy of that? Because I feel it might be useful for existing directors or responsible persons as well.
Sure, someone could just, whoever was after it could just email me and I could organise that to be sent out.
Excellent, thank you. And a reminder that we do have some breaks scheduled this afternoon. It's a great opportunity to network and to exchange some information. So if people need to approach anyone in particular, we encourage you to use that opportunity. I might throw this one to Tim. The Minister discussed collaboration at length. Is there information sharing with other government organisations, and are there any barriers that hinder this?
Thanks, Mel. So from our perspective, we are committed to maximising the use of our data, and as you'd hopefully all be aware, we have MOUs with pretty much all state and territory regulators to share our data to reduce red tape for charities. We will work collaboratively with whoever is receiving our data, but from their perspective, sometimes they may have IT issues or some issues they need to resolve. We continue to update the data that we provide, including via the charity passport, which is one of our key means of providing data. And for example, in the last couple of months, we reviewed and updated our MOU with ORIC. And in the next couple of months, we will be reviewing a few more MOUs and possibly signing a few more with new regulators.
Thank you, Tim. Rachel, I think this might be best directed at yourself. How does the ACNC carry out consultation?
Thanks, Mel. So there's a range of ways we undertake consultation, and we do have a stakeholder engagement framework published on our website. We've got a number of sort of formal mechanisms, such as the advisor forum and the sector forum. So the advisor forum is made up of mainly legal representatives and accountants who provide a lot of services to charities and not-for-profits. And the sector forum is made up of charity leaders. We also have what we call our consultation panel, which is a slightly more informal group that we reach out to via email if we're seeking feedback on any particular material. And then there are sort of more informal ways. So we may reach out to specific organisations to get feedback on particular work we're doing. We analyse the inquiries that come in through the contact centre, and that informs things like developing guidance and tells us where people are getting stuck with engaging with us. And then obviously, you know, we all go to meetings with various stakeholders, and that information all comes back to the ACNC as well and helps to inform our work.
Thank you, Rachel. Now, there might be a few people who might be best placed to answer this, so I'll ask it, and I invite my colleagues to jump in. Where are the proposed reforms to address the Corporations Act quirks?
Tim, I'm not... Oh, we've lost him, have we?
He's coming back.
Coming back?
I'm back.
Do you want to take that one about the work you've been doing on the governance committee around registers?
Yeah, I cannot. I'm not sure what the quirks people are referring to in the question. Caitlin's covered off that potential quirk in some of the Corps Act in terms of notifying. Other sort of, I guess, legislative changes, as far as we're aware, are not on the Commonwealth's agenda at this point in time. But as Caitlin and I mentioned, we will continue to work within government to resolve any quirks relating to the Corporations Act.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm mindful of time. The time is 1:35, and that is the scheduled end of this session. I would like to thank my colleagues, the senior leadership team at the ACNC. That was fantastic, a great opportunity to answer some questions and hear about what the organisation is doing to support the sector. We are now going to go to a break. We will be starting back at 1:45 p.m. in about 9 minutes' time. Please network, have a break, stretch your legs if you need to, and we'll see you back very shortly. Thank you all.